Black Americans have endured a number of crimes throughout American history, including widespread and terrible massacres that took place all over the nation. These massacres, which were frequently motivated by racism and white supremacy, resulted in the deaths of several innocent black males. In this video, we'll look at 5 of the most horrific acts of violence against Black Americans in history. These heinous crimes have left the Black community with severe wounds and serve as a painful reminder of the systemic discrimination and violence they've endured for centuries. These atrocities resulted in the deaths of countless innocent people. We must acknowledge and take lessons from these tragedies. Number 1. Atlanta Massacre. One significant event in Atlanta's history that involved violence against the Black community is the Atlanta Race Riot of 1906. It was a period of intense racial violence and civil unrest in Atlanta. The trigger for the riot was a series of newspaper reports of alleged assaults by black men against white women. These reports fueled racial tensions and led to an outburst of violence against the black population. White mobs targeted and attacked African Americans in the streets, looted their businesses, and burned their homes. The riot resulted in the death of at least 25 black people, although the actual number may have been higher, with many others injured. Lynchings involved extrajudicial executions carried out by white mobs, often as a means of racial control and intimidation. While Atlanta itself did not experience as many lynchings as some other areas, the threat and fear of these acts were widespread. Lynchings targeted black individuals accused of crimes or perceived transgressions, but often without proper legal proceedings, causing significant damage to the African American community in Atlanta. Atlanta, like many cities in the South, enforced racial segregation and discrimination during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Jim Crow laws, which enforced racial segregation and denied African Americans equal rights and opportunities, were prevalent. The effects of segregation and discrimination were pervasive, resulting in systemic inequality and marginalization of the black community. Number 2. Springfield Massacre. The Springfield Massacre was indeed a tragic and violent event that took place in Springfield, Illinois, on August 14th and 15th, 1908. It was a racially motivated riot that had a significant and lasting impact on the city and its African American community. The riot began after false rumors spread in Springfield that a black man named George Richardson had assaulted 2 white women. These rumors fueled racial tensions and led to a mob gathering outside the Sangamon County Courthouse, demanding that Richardson be handed over to them. The authorities, fearing for Richardson's safety, secretly transported him out of the city. The mob, however, did not disperse and instead turned its anger towards the African American community in Springfield. The mob rampaged through black neighborhoods, vandalizing homes and businesses and attacking African American residents. The violence escalated, resulting in numerous injuries and deaths. At least 2 black men, Scott Burton and William Donegan, were lynched by the mob during the riot. Many African American families were displaced and their homes and properties were destroyed. The Springfield Race Riot of 1908 was significant not only because of the violence and loss of life, but also due to its broader impact. The riot drew national attention, shedding light on the pervasive racism and violence against African Americans in the United States. Number 3. The Slocum Massacre. The Slocum Massacre of 1910 was a terrible episode that happened in Slocum, Texas, in the United States. It was a vicious racist killing that targeted black people and killed a significant number of them. The incident is frequently referred to as the deadliest race massacre in Texas history. Over 400 people lived in Slocum, a small town in East Texas, with African Americans making up half of the population. The town had a history of racial conflict and violence, as well as a large white population. White mobs, often consisting of local residents and outsiders, launched a coordinated and brutal assault on the black residents of the area. The attackers used firearms, including rifles and shotguns, to attack African Americans indiscriminately. During the massacre, black families were forced to flee their homes, seeking safety in nearby woods and fields. The white mob systematically targeted and killed African Americans they encountered, often burning their homes and destroying their property. The violence continued for several days, with sporadic clashes and attacks against the black community. Estimates of the number of casualties during the Slocum Massacre vary, but it is believed that at least 8 black individuals were killed. It is important to note that the history of the Slocum Massacre was largely suppressed and ignored for many years. The event was not widely acknowledged or discussed until much later. Number 4. Knights of Labor. During the vital harvest season, black sugarcane workers workers in Thibodaux, Louisiana, attempted to unionize and demand fair wages on November 23rd, but the peaceful demonstration ended in tragedy. These employees experienced difficult working conditions. The Knights of Labor, one of the few unions, complained of hard hours and meager compensation, as well as scripts that could only be used in plantation stores. When labor demands were at their highest during the rolling season, Junius Bailey, a 29-year-old teacher and union leader, tried to negotiate with growers for better terms. The negotiations collapsed, though, however, and on November 22nd, the growers refused to negotiate and fired the union members. The workers went on strike for the following 3 weeks. As the crack of dawn broke on November 23rd, gunfire erupted from the cornfield, injuring 2 white guards. This tragic incident serves as a catalyst for the beginning of the massacre. In the meantime, white vigilantes restricted Thibodaux, searching for strikers and demanding passes from any black people entering or leaving the town. Samuel D. McHenry, a former sugar planter and Democratic governor, was persuaded by the planters to send out numerous troops of the all-white state militia, which was under the leadership of a former Confederate soldier. About 60 people were killed indiscriminately by vigilantes who shot suspected strikers and any black people who got in their way. Many of the strikers' bodies were dumped in unmarked graves. Killings continued to spread to other plantations, forcing those who survived to seek refuge in the woods and swamps. This was one of the deadliest events in American history. Number 5. Colfax Massacre. Colfax, a small Louisiana town, was the scene of a massacre on April 13, 1873. A battle between black and white citizens of Louisiana resulted in the deaths of 150 black people and 3 white people. The massacre took place following the hotly disputed 1872 election for governor of Louisiana. The Colfax Massacre stemmed from a contentious political and racial climate in the aftermath of the American Civil War. In the disputed gubernatorial election of 1872, tensions escalated between the white supremacist Democratic Party and the interracial coalition of Republicans, which included African Americans. On April 2, 1873, armed white supremacists, including members of the White League, attacked the local courthouse in Colfax, which was being guarded by a small group of African American and white Republican militia members. After several hours of intense fighting, the outnumbered defenders surrendered. Following the surrender, the white supremacists rounded up and disarmed the captured black and white militia members. They then proceeded to execute many of the captured African Americans despite their surrender. Estimates of the number of black victims vary, but it is believed that at least 60 and possibly over 150 African Americans were killed during the massacre. Some sources suggest that only 3 white men died in the conflict. The Colfax Massacre marked a significant turning point in Reconstruction-era politics and racial relations. It highlighted the struggle for political power between white supremacists seeking to reestablish white control and the African American population seeking to secure their newly gained rights and equality. To conclude, by shining a light on these atrocities, we can strive to create a more inclusive and compassionate world, where every individual is valued and respected, regardless of their race or ethnicity.